Yeah, we back. Yeah, we back. Now, today's video was inspired by the video I did on Captain President Ibrahim Traoré, where he said that our ancestors are smarter than us and we are dumber than them.
How did our ancestors manage to recognize ferritic soil from other soil? How did they manage to exploit this soil? Extract iron, make their tools? Answer me. So they were smarter than us. How did our ancestors extract gold? Know the areas where the gold is, extract it and become very rich. The richest man was in Africa, in West Africa, here I think Mali. Our ancestors were smarter than us and we are dumber than them.
All right, we back. Now, if you watched that video, I was in full agreement with what the captain said. In fact, I even gave another example of how our ancestors were superior to us intellectually and pretty much in all aspects of life. The example I gave was the Citadel, right? The legendary Citadel built by His Excellency, His Majesty, King Henry Christophe, the King of Haiti, one of the most magnificent constructions ever built by the black race, and one of the greatest constructions ever built by the human race in general. When it comes to me, I put it right up there with the Egyptian pyramids in terms of the mystery of how it was built. Still to this day, nobody really truly understands how it was built. Nobody understands how it was created. First of all, you're talking about a military fortification that is over 100,000 square feet on top of a mountain 3,000 feet in the sky, with the walls several meters in thickness, strong enough to withstand cannon fire. And then you got to take into account that the Citadel holds hundreds of cannons, hundreds of 19th century cannons, over 300, and each of them varying in different weights, right? Some can weigh over 1,000 pounds, some can weigh over 2,000 pounds, some can weigh up to 9,000 pounds, right? So how the hell did you even carry that up the mountain? And even if you were trying to build it again today with modern technology, it would still be a nightmare because, number one, it's on a narrow mountain ridge. There's no road access up the mountain, the top of the mountain. You got to go through, the forest and the little tiny, the donkey trail. To build it today, you would have to use like helicopters or some airlifts or some like custom built technology to even get it done. And then to transport the materials up the mountain, the big massive stone blocks and all the way up the top of the mountain, and then carrying up each cannon, the hundreds of cannons up the mountain. Like I said, some of the cannons weigh 1,200 pounds, 3,000 pounds, 6,000 pounds, right? Getting it up the mountain. Now you got cranes and forklifts and cables, but back then you didn't have no forklifts, you didn't have no cranes, it was just jungle and forest up the mountain. How did they carry all that stuff up the mountain? These are questions that need answers. I swear to God, if I could talk to the forefathers, that would be one of the first questions I would ask them. Listen, before anything, we could talk about the revolution and all that amazing stuff, but listen, how did you build the damn stone fortress on top of the mountain? I need to know that first. Before you tell me any stories about back in the day, you need to tell me the secrets of how y'all built that. And on top of that, you need to break down the science behind it. What was the science and the geometry that y'all used to make sure that not only did you build it, but it has been able to stand tall centuries later through a bunch of, thunderstorms and tropical storms and earthquakes that shook the foundation of the country. It's still standing still to this day. You need to tell us, how did y'all do that, bro? Because the adversary, they're going to say the aliens built it. The aliens did it. Or they're going to try to lie and say they did it, right? The adversary going to say either the aliens did it or we did it. No, the black man did it. But the thing is, we don't even know how the black man did it. So this is like a mystery. This is a grand mystery. We know the black man did it for sure. But how did he do it? We need to find out, bro. How did we do it? But anyways, I'm going to get into some clips. One of them is going to be from a previous video I dropped a while back talking about the construction of the Citadel and other clips of the Citadel as well. So I'll be right back. Let's go. The survival of many of Christophe's letters mean that we can learn a lot about the building of the Citadel. He micromanaged the whole project, right down to bossing individual blacksmiths and carpenters. No mean feat, while he was effectively second in command for the whole army. The Citadel sits on top of a mountain around 900 meters above sea level, all the better for spotting potential French invaders. Note the artillery. The Citadel wasn't just big, it was also a piece of cutting-edge military architecture, incorporating the theories of Vauban and Montalembert, with bastions for interlocking fields of fire and stacked galleries of guns to rain death below.
Wow, yo, this was really well built. Wow. Get up. Oh man.
Now I'm gonna jump into one of my playlists, a series I did a while back, the biography of Christophe's life, where we actually spoke about the construction of the Citadel. So I'm gonna jump into those clips and then I'm gonna come back and give my hypothesis or my thoughts on how possibly the Citadel could have been built. Just my opinion. I wasn't there. I'm just giving my thoughts as a modern human living in 2025. Anyway, I'll be right back. With Haiti's internal enemies defeated, Dessalines now turned his thoughts to the National Defense Plan. In 1804, he ordered that the interior of the nation be fortified with a chain of nearly 30 mountaintop military fortresses. Should France attempt another invasion, the coastal ports would be destroyed and the army retreat to the fortresses to wage guerrilla war. Haiti was divided into 6 military divisions, with each commanding general responsible for building the strongholds in the area. As commander of the North Division, Christophe was given the largest workload, with a total of 8 forts to be built. Christophe had begun to move Cap-Haïtien's arsenal to the interior. The city's businesses were shuttered for 2 days, and almost the entire civilian population was pressed into service to carry arms and ammunition 20 kilometers inland. The work was overseen by Colonel Noel Joachim, who Christophe also chose to manage the most ambitious construction project of all, Fort La Ferrière, later to be known as Citadel Henry, or more simply, the Citadel. Everything about the Citadel was to be superlative. Its location was the most imperious in the country, atop the long, narrow ridge of Pic La Ferrière mountain, above Christophe's old stronghold at Millau. At over 900 meters high, the peak was frequently swathed in clouds, but on a clear day, it commanded views to Cap-Haïtien and out to sea, and south across the mountains into the interior. When completed, the fort would eventually cover 15,000 square meters, making it the largest fortress in all of the Americas. Its multi-level batteries were at the cutting edge of military architecture, providing a murderous field of fire for those sides of the Citadel not protected by a precipitous mountain drop, while also protecting the slopes on which crops could be grown for supplies against the siege. Water came from a series of massive cisterns and an internal moat that further protected the fort's interior. The walls eventually towered 45 meters high and were never less than 4 meters thick. The French invasion never came, but the fear of an attack pushed Christophe to demand ever faster progress on the Citadel. For much of the next 6 months, he was a constant presence at the site. Every commander in the north was ordered to send him 25 workers from each plantation, with a particular call for masons and carpenters. The Spanish prisoners were screened to find wheelwrights or blacksmiths to meet the fort's insatiable demand for skilled labor. The Citadel became an enormous mountaintop labor camp, with a spell on site there the punishment for any Haitian soldier guilty of indiscipline. Several of Cap-Haïtien's remaining French citizens who were deemed a security risk were also sent to the work site. The fort's location posed its own challenges. An endless chain of porters carried building supplies to the mountaintop, from bricks scavenged from ruined French plantation buildings to the sugarcane whose juice was mixed with sand and lime to make mortar, and the barrels of herrings that fed the workforce. Arming the Citadel was even more of a trial. Christophe ordered the coastal fort stripped of their artillery to be sent to the interior, and he obsessed over the making of gun carriages for their transport and installation, and a sufficient provision of ropes for the mammoth task of hauling them up the mountain. The majority of the artillery pieces weighed over 2.5 tons, and many of them double that. But in total, over 163 cannons and mortars were ultimately sent to the Citadel, along with an equally epic supply of cannonballs. In amassing such a battery, Christophe created an inadvertent tribute to the convoluted history of the Haitian Revolution. All right, we back. Now, the construction is one thing, but my thing is, how did they get the materials up to the top of the mountain? How did you get those massive cannons up to the top of the mountain? For example, take a look up on the screen. The weight of a 19th century cannon varied significantly, from lighter field guns weighing around 1,200 pounds, right? So those were the lighter guns, right? The lighter cannons, the smaller cannons was coming in at over 1,000 pounds, right? Then you have the massive, the siege and the naval guns at over 7,000 pounds, right? So, and then you have some coming in at over 9,000 pounds, and then you had over 300 of those on the top of the mountain. How did they get that up the top of the mountain? Now, like I said, even in the modern day, that would be a very difficult task just based on the location and the logistics. But we're talking about back in the day, coming fresh out of slavery, no Western education. The only education you have is the ancient education that you just, retain through your culture throughout existence. There was no machinery. There were no engines. There were no nothing, no cranes, no tractors, no helicopters, no nothing, right? You had to do it manually. You had to get it up the damn mountain manually. At best, you might have had some ropes and a large team of people, or maybe you might have had a carriage to, pull the cannon up the mountain. But these cannons are weighing, like I said, 1,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds. So what happens when you're going up the very steep part of the mountain? And then what happens if the cannon rolls back on the carriage? You're going to get crushed behind it, right? the cannon is going to roll back down the mountain and everybody behind it is going to get crushed and get killed. So how did they manage to pull up like 5,000 pound cannons up the steep parts of the mountain to the top and then get it up to like the top floor of the Citadel? Because the Citadel has different, they have like the base area, then they have like the top overlooking the whole view of the whole island. So how did you get the cannons up to the very top floor of the Citadel? Bro, what? Yo, bro, Christophe, man, you got to come back from the dead and talk to us, big bro. Christophe got to come back to the dead, got to come back from the dead and do an interview on the channel and tell us how he did that. But that's why when I seen the captain's video, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and when he said what he said about how our ancestors are superior than us, our ancestors are smarter than us, and we are dumber than them, I really felt that. I really felt when he said that, because that is absolutely true, right? The men that came before us, we are only a fraction of those illustrious men. Now, also, something else we got to keep in mind is that a lot of people died in the construction of the Citadel, right? Especially when you examine just the geometry of it and all those like corners at the top. Imagine if you're working at the very top of the Citadel, right? You building it, you laying the stone blocks. What happens if you accidentally fall over, right? There definitely wasn't like no cables and no safety harnesses. You had to be at the top, at the very top, over 100 feet high on top of the mountain, and you're doing the construction work, right? Unfortunately, there were many ancestors that slipped and fell off the Citadel and went down the mountain and died, right? We already mentioned how they might have got crushed by the cannons and the stone blocks that might have rolled back down the mountain. But it was just a very dangerous job, man. And not only was it just, I don't understand how you got this stuff up the mountain, but just building it itself was very dangerous. And then for the fact that, like we said, it has withstood all the various earthquakes and thunderstorms that have smashed the island for over 200 years, and it's still standing tall. It has not moved. It has not budged at all, right? That goes to show this is one of the most epic examples of construction and architecture just ever exemplified by the black race and the human race in general. Christophe need to come back from the dead and have a sit-down interview and tell us exactly how he did that, because I still can't believe it. Nobody understands it. They're gonna say the aliens did it. Now, the reason why the Citadel was built, the primary reason was in anticipation of a French invasion. So that would be one of the main points of defense. That's why they had over 300 cannons up in the Citadel. But when Christophe was in power, the French never came. The French they never wanted no smoke, right? So essentially, during his time, the Citadel pretty much served as the arsenal, right? The main arsenal where hundreds of cannons and all the gunpowder was stored, where resources and provisions like food and water for thousands of soldiers, that's where it was stored, right? It kind of served as like the Pentagon, like the main, building, the central building for the military, the military commanders, right? The administrative and strategic hub of the country, the command post, the central command post. Also, Christophe and his family had living quarters inside the Citadel. So Christophe would alternate between the palace, which was the main headquarters, and the Citadel, which served as the second headquarters. So he would alternate between spending time in the palace and the Citadel. He would live in those two areas, and sometimes he would go to his other chateaus and areas. Christophe had like several properties, but the Citadel and the palace was his main residences. And then you got to take into account how the world reacted to it during that time, because the Citadel was not a secret. As early as 1810, it was printed in the British newspapers, the first images that were published worldwide of the Citadel, right? And then, of course, the American leaders, nearby, the United States presidents, they found out about it because the British and American merchants and the sailors who were, coming by and stopping by the country, they seen the construction of the Citadel taking place when they came to buy the sugar and the coffee and the timber and whatever we had for sale. So they were the ones that would leak the information to the media and to their governments, basically saying, man, listen, I was down in Saint-Domingue, I was down in Haiti, and man, they down there building a massive stone fortification on top of a damn mountain. I don't even understand how they doing it. So really, they were the first ones to see it firsthand, right? They were the ones that saw the construction, the massive, shipments coming in for the materials and the tens of thousands of workers going up the hill. The foreign merchants were the first ones to see it up close, and they sent letters back and things like that. So, that reached the newspapers over in London, over in Paris, over in New York. And of course, they didn't understand it, right? Man, who's this black man? Who's this black king? And talking about he got a massive castle on top of a mountain. They can't believe it, right? They can't believe it. So, honestly, the construction of the Citadel itself was probably a shock to the white supremacists, of that time. On top of the fact that Christophe was actually living more lavishly than the United States presidents during that time. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe. When you look at the palace and the Citadel compared to what was the president of the United States living in during that time. Like Thomas Jefferson was living in, his plantation in Virginia, right? These guys were living on plantations and shit like that. Christophe was living on a real massive palace, like the most magnificent building in the region, his palace, and then the Citadel, the most magnificent fortress in the region, the Citadel. So they couldn't believe that a black man was living in the most magnificent circumstances, even better than the United States presidents who are European planters, right? They couldn't believe it. Christophe turned the game on its head. That's why I'm saying, man, one of the most legendary black men ever to touch this side of the world. But anyway, man, I'm not going to be here too long, man. But Christophe, you need to come back from the dead and tell us how you did that, big bro. We need to know how you did that for sure. And yeah, anyway, it's your boy Neferkari the Salim back in the Billy, yes indeed. Second single of the next project, The Spy in Bamako. Pin comment at the top. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD1814, and I'm gone. Peace.
Feel like a see me, I feel like I'm Saudi or ran up on Yan in the middle of Bamako. Enemy line, they claiming he innocent. Don't do no talking, I gotta move militant. Don't do no talking, I hit him with facts. 1804, bringing it back. 1804 like I'm Mother Cap Henry. King with the vision, the crown never empty. Top of the mountain, my soldiers defend me. Ducking and dodging the foreign intelligence. Hitting my dance on the DGSE. Dodging they traps, still on my feet. Feeling impeccable, feel like I'm shining. Go to my neck and I'm flooded with diamonds. Go to my neck and I feel like a mess. Feel like a lion, I'm in the savannah. Feel like the king when I'm up in the jungle. Never defeated, I never been humble. Come out victorious every encounter. Money machine give me help when I count it. Money machine stack it up in a beat. Heart of a king and I ride for the team. Weight of the world got it stuck on my shoulders. Bet you can feel it, my heart getting colder. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell him get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison. Hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison. Hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater.